Hi iguanas, welcome back to chapter 2 of The Crooked House. Chapter 2. Dad! Ivy squinted. The split screen image on Seb's phone was distorted and moved in slow motion. She nudged Seb in the ribs. I told you video calls was a stupid idea. Why didn't we just ring them? Seb grumbled something about reception and repositioned the phone higher on his knee. If you owned a phone, like most people, you'd know it's easier to three-way call using video chat, but you don't because you're weird. Ivy rolled her eyes. Whatever. Mum, Dad, can you see us now? The video flickered. Ivy shifted in her seat. Around her, the A&E department of Bletchley Scrub Hospital was teeming with people, doctors in white coats with stethoscopes draped around their necks, solemn-faced relatives, nurses carrying clipboards, and hobbling patients clutching swollen limbs. Ivy ran her eyes over the linoleum floor and glossy white walls. There wasn't a trace of tinsel or glitter anywhere. 3 days after Boxing Day and Christmas had been just about forgotten. Just like that, Grandma Sylvie would have hated it. Ivy, are you there? Dad, finally! The image sharpened and Ivy grimaced. Her dad was far too close to the camera, his pale, freckled face taking over most of the left of the screen. On the right, Ivy's mum could be seen sitting at a table in her staff canteen. She was wearing a pale blue nurse's tunic with a silver fob watch hanging from the top pocket. Her mum tucked a stray wisp of brown hair behind her ears and leaned closer. Frowning. You're back now? Oh, but you just keep going all fuzzy. I'm on the train to Paris, Ivy's dad called. My reception's bad. Can anyone see me? We can see both of you, Dad, Ivy said. Did you understand what I explained about Grandma? Dad had frowned. Yes, just about. I can't believe it. Is she all right? Are you two all right? Ivy shrugged. We're okay. Seb, their mum said sternly, are you looking after your sister? Seb was slouched in the hospital chair beside Ivy, his scuffed white trainers resting on the plastic coffee table, with the phone wedged between his knees, his headphones snaked into his lap. Yes, he muttered, don't worry. Ivy thought for a moment. Seb lied about his age. He told them he was 16. Seb's eyes turned to slits as he looked at her. If you're 16, you can be on your own. It's the law. Ivy pulled a face at him. It doesn't matter about that now. Their dad said. As long as you stay together. How's Grandma? Ivy gazed over at the blue cotton curtain fluttering a few metres behind Seb's shoulder. It concealed a small room where Grandma Sylvie was lying on her stretcher. Ivy paused before answering, trying not to get upset again. She's asleep now. We're in A&E, but the doctor said that she's going for an X-ray later. What do you think we should do? Her dad hesitated. Ivy could hear the rattle of the train in the background. There's only one option, really, their mum said, pursing her lips. You both return to Grandma's house and sit tight until we get there. Even if I leave now, it'll be a good few hours before I get to Bletchley Scrub. Their dad started nodding. Agreed. Seb, you can pay for the bus back to Grandma's house out of the money that I gave you yesterday. Ivy's heart lifted. So you're coming back, both of you? Her mum swept a hand across her forehead. Of course we are. You've done a great job so far, but don't worry. We'll sort everything out when we get there. I might not arrive until late this evening, but I'll be there, Ivy's dad told her. You'll be okay, won't you? Make sure you have something to eat and look after each other. He paused and lowered his voice, or at least try to. Ivy glanced at Seb, who was flickering through the track list of his iPod, only half concentrating on the screen. I'll try. After their dad had waved goodbye, their mum blew a kiss and hung up. Seb put his phone away and his earphones in his ears without saying another word. Ivy sank back in her chair, her thick blue duffel coat creased up around her. She wished her mum and dad were with them now. This place was horrible. She crossed her arms and stared out aimlessly across the waiting room. A man in a grey trench coat was coming through the main doors. He was wearing pointy black shoes and a wide-brimmed hat that hid his face. Ivy watched as he slipped between the staff and the patients, around the reception desk, and then flitted past a pair of security guards. He was heading towards them, towards the cubicles where people were taken from the ambulances. The longer Ivy watched the man, the more certain she felt that he didn't want anyone else to notice him. He kept looking from side to side, timing his movements to coincide with those of everyone around him. As he drew closer, Ivy spied two gnarled yellow appendages poking out of his coat sleeves. She recoiled as she realised what they were. His hands. The skin across both palms were covered in pustules and shriveled, so that his fingers looked like diseased, rotting twigs. Ivy lowered her face as he went past. She wondered what had happened to him. Maybe he had been in some terrible chemical accident. Certainly it was nothing normal. She'd never seen anything like it, not even in the movies. When she raised her eyes, he was standing at the end of the long line of cubicles, the row that Grandma Sylvie was in. He peeked behind the nearest curtain, waited a moment, then turned and tried the next one. Ivy watched him repeat the process again and again. He seemed to be looking for something. Or someone, Ivy thought. She froze as she realised he was heading in Grandma Sylvie's direction. Seb was nodding his head to the beat of air drumming in his lap. Ivy sprang out of her seat, thumping him on his shoulder. Seb! He shrugged her off and pulled one headphone away from his ear. Ivy, what? There's a man! She turned. He was 3 curtains away. Quick! She hurdled over Seb's legs and dashed along the row of chairs, her wellies squeaking on the lino. Seb sauntered after her, fixing her with a stare. What is wrong with you? Her heartbeat quickened. Ivy ripped open the curtain to Grandma Sylvie's cubicle. Grandma, are you? Oh. Her grandma looked peaceful, her eyes closed and her hands placed delicately across her stomach, exactly as she had been when Ivy last saw her. Ivy looked back along the corridor, searching for the man in grey. It was empty, but the man couldn't possibly have had time to disappear. She looked away for barely a second. Seb tramped up to her shoulder. This had better be good. You don't understand, she whispered. There was this strange man here. I thought he was going to do something to Grandma. What? Seb's jaw tightened. Why can't you be normal, like for once? It was just starting to rain when they reached Grandma Sylvie's house, almost an hour's bus ride later. Droplets drummed against Ivy's hood and tumbled through her frizzy hair and stuck out beneath it. She looked up at the familiar higgledy-piggledy outline of the house, with the clay chimney and the crumbling plaster walls. It used to be an old farmhouse, or so Ivy's dad told her, which explained why it was in the middle of nowhere. You're paranoid, Seb said, striding past her. You know that, right? All those books that you've read, like they've twisted your mind or something. Ivy marched after him. I'm not making this up, she insisted. There was a man in there with really gross hands, and as we were leaving A&E, I heard the nurse say that Grandma's notes have gone missing. What if it was the man who took them? Seb sighed. Ivy, that guy, whoever he was obviously just a patient or something, like a burns victim. Maybe he was crazy like you. Whatever. Anyway, I just want to get inside and eat. Ivy yanked angrily on the strap of Grandma Sylvie's handbag as she swept past Seb towards the front door. If books had twisted her mind, then playing drums had made her brother deaf to reason. He never listened to her, ever. Ivy? All of a sudden, Seb's voice sounded odd. What? She snapped, turning back to him. He was holding a shaky finger out towards the house. Ivy followed it and almost tripped over. She didn't understand how she could have missed it. The front door was ajar. The frame was splintered, and there were deep scratch marks all around the lock. Seb lowered his finger to his side, as if he wasn't sure whether to stay or run. Finally, he whispered, "Police." He got out his phone and tapped the screen. Ivy could see it from where she was standing. The word "no service" flashed as he tried to make the call. Perfect. What do we do? She asked. Seb tiptoed over the gravel towards the house and peered in through the front windows. The curtains are drawn, he hissed. I'll have to go in and use the landline. Ivy nodded. Right, good idea. What about me? Seb looked back at the door. We'll go in together. You stay behind me. As Ivy set foot over the threshold, her skin prickled. There was a slow scratching noise coming from inside, like thick wallpaper being ripped off the wall. Her eyes flitted into the shadows of the hallway. She just about recognised Grandma Sylvie's antique writing desk, the one with the curling legs and the tea-stained top, toppled over on the floor. The drawers were all missing, and a pile of thick green writing paper had been strewn across the carpet. Seb removed a walking stick from the upturned umbrella stand and raised it above his head. As Ivy followed him, her mind raced. That scratching noise was definitely getting louder. The further they got into the house, it got louder. She wondered what could be making it. She waited as Seb paused to open the kitchen door. Ready? He reached for the doorknob with a trembling hand. Ivy nodded. As the door opened and the air from the kitchen slipped out, she caught a strong whiff of damp dog. Strange. The kitchen never smelled of anything other than baking. The lights were already on, even though Ivy was certain that she'd turned them off before they got into the ambulance. Her heart raced as she inched forward. To her left, the kitchen cupboards were minus their doors. Fragments of wood, exploded food cans and torn packets lay scattered across the worktops, and smashed crockery filled the sink. A dirty patch on the wall was only evident from where the fridge used to stand. It now lay belly up on the kitchen tiles, its contents pooling out like vomit. Ivy took a few steps forward, crunching over spilled breakfast cereal and vegetables. Her gaze fell upon the set of muddy animal tracks trailing across the kitchen floor. Seb's voice was faint. Over there! Ivy drew her eyes away from the prints and followed his hovering finger. Right across the opposite wall, 3 words had appeared. We can see. Each of the letters was the size of a dinner plate and appeared to have been scratched into the pastel wallpaper, which now revealed the blood red of the previous decor. The implement inflicting this damage, she saw, was a feather, large, glossy and black. As it continued to write, it hovered in the air like a wasp. Then, after scoring 2 further words into the wall, it disappeared with an indignant puff. In its place, a tiny silver coin materialised, dropping to the floor with a bing. With a gasp, Ivy read the words on the wall. We can see you now. We can see you now. Wow, lots of mysterious things happening in chapter 2. I wonder what the moving feather is. And who was that mysterious man with the withered hands that she saw in the hospital? I'm sure we're going to find out very soon. Good night for now. See you soon.